Hello and welcome to The Explainer. Today we're jumping into a really powerful framework for teaching and learning. It's called Understanding by Design, or UBD for short. It was created by Grant Wiggins and Jay McTeigue, and honestly, it's all about making learning actually stick. We're going to break down exactly how it works.
So let's start with a question we can all relate to. Why is it that students can cram for a test, pass it, and then poof, a week later, it's like they never learned it at all? We've all been there, right? This is a huge, huge problem, and it kind of suggests that maybe the traditional way we plan lessons isn't focused on what really matters. Deep, lasting understanding.
All right, so here's our roadmap for this explainer. First, we're going to look at this core idea of planning forward versus planning backward. Then we'll walk through the three big stages of UBD, figuring out the destination, gathering the evidence, and then finally planning the journey. And to wrap it all up, we'll do a little reality check on what it actually takes to get this going in the real world. So at its very heart, Understanding by Design is all about flipping the typical planning process completely on its head. I know it sounds like a simple change, but trust me, it has massive implications for how we teach and, more importantly, what students actually end up learning.
Wiggins and McTighe have this great term. They call them the twin sins of traditional design. The first one is activity-focused planning. You know what this is. It's when a teacher plans a unit around a really fun activity, like building a diorama, without a super clear learning goal attached to it. The second sin is coverage-focused planning. This is basically just marching through the textbook, chapter by chapter, just to say you covered everything, whether or not the students actually get it.
And this, right here, shows you the whole shift in a nutshell. Traditional forward design starts with the how, the activities. You grab a textbook, you plan some lectures, you find some worksheets, and then kind of at the end, you make a test about it. But UBD, backward design, it starts with the why and the what. You begin with the end in mind. What exactly do you want students to know and be able to do when it's all said and done? Okay, now, how are they going to prove it to you? Only then, only after you've answered those two questions, do you start planning the day-to-day activities.
I love this analogy because it makes so much sense. You wouldn't just jump in your car and start driving hoping you end up somewhere cool, right? No. You pick your destination first. You say, we're going to the Grand Canyon. Then you figure out your route, what you need to pack. The destination dictates the journey. And education really should work the exact same way.
Okay, so let's dig into that first stage. Stage one is all about defining that destination. Before you even think about a single lesson or activity, you have to be absolutely crystal clear on what you want your students to understand for the long, long haul.
This is such a great way to visualize it. Think of all the stuff you could teach. Some of it is just worth being familiar with. Then a smaller circle is stuff that's important to know and do. But right there in the center, that bullseye, that's the enduring understanding. These are the big transferable ideas that are going to stick with students years from now, long after they've forgotten the little facts and dates. UBD forces us to focus right on that core.
So how do you get to that core? Well, one of the key tools is something called an essential question. And these are not your typical trivia questions. You can't just Google the answer. They're big, they're open-ended, and they're designed to be wrestled with and revisited over and over again. They're what sparks real curiosity.
And just look at these examples. In a history class, asking, whose story is it, completely changes how you analyze an event. In math, asking, when is the correct answer not the best solution, well, that pushes kids way beyond just calculation and into real-world problem solving. These are the kinds of questions that drive the whole learning process.
Okay, so we've picked our destination with stage one. Now for stage two. How do we know if our students have actually arrived? This is the part where we have to think like an assessor before we think like a lesson planner. This is so crucial. Stage two is not about whipping up a multiple choice test to see if students can spit back facts. No, it's about designing authentic tasks where students have to apply their knowledge in a meaningful way to actually show you that they get it. But what does understanding even look like? I mean, it's kind of fuzzy, right? Well, UBD breaks it down into these 6 facets. A student who really understands can explain it in their own words. They can interpret the meaning of a story or data. They can apply what they learned to a totally new situation. They can see things from a different perspective. They can empathize, and they can have self-knowledge about what they know and what they still need to learn. It gives us a much richer way to think about assessment. And this quote from the creators just nails it. The ultimate proof, the gold standard of understanding, is transfer.
It's that ability to take what you've learned in the classroom and use it on your own in a new real-world situation. That's the goal.
All right, and that brings us to the final piece of the puzzle, Stage 3. We've got our destination from Stage 1. We know what proof of arrival looks like from Stage 2, so now, and only now, do we actually plan the day-to-day learning experiences. We design the journey itself.
Now, to make sure this journey is actually effective, Wiggins and McTighe came up with this really helpful acronym, WHRTO. It's a way to make sure you're not just throwing random activities at students, but that every part of the lesson is strategically designed to get them to that end goal.
So let's quickly run through it. The W is for making sure students know where they're going and why it matters. H is for hooking them right from the start and holding their interest. The first E is to equip them with all the knowledge and skills they need. R is for giving them chances to rethink and revise their work. That's so important. The second E is so students can evaluate their own learning. T means the plan is tailored for different learners. And finally, O means the whole thing is organized logically to lead to that deep understanding. It's basically a checklist for awesome lesson planning.
Okay, so this all sounds fantastic in theory, but what's it actually like in the real world? Let's do a quick and honest reality check on the pros and cons of using understanding by design. So the good stuff is pretty obvious, right? You get deeper understanding, everything is aligned, students are more engaged. But the challenges are, they're real. Designing a unit this way takes a lot more time up front. Teachers who are used to the old way need serious training and support. And yeah, it can be tough to pull off if you have limited resources, or if your students are just used to memorizing and spitting back facts. It's a big shift for everyone. But even with those hurdles, this isn't just some niche idea. It's being used and adapted all over the globe. You've got educators in places like Indonesia, for example, who are working with this framework, which just goes to show that this desire for more meaningful, deep learning, it's pretty universal.
And that really brings us to the final critical question that this whole framework leaves us with. It forces every single person involved in education to ask, what is our actual goal here? Are we just trying to race through a textbook to make sure we cover all the material? Or are we intentionally designing learning experiences that lead to real, genuine, lasting understanding? That, right there, is the fundamental shift that understanding by design demands we make.